people tonight. So let's ask Sue Doherty, Jane Franz, or France, and Henry Seton or Seton to come up, please. And then on deck, Rebecca Cusick, Catherine Goudrine, and Ann O'Halloran, please. Go right ahead. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for hearing us tonight. My name is Sue Doherty. I'm a librarian and have been an English teacher in the Brockton Public School.
Move the mic just away a little bit. There you go. That's all right. Just somebody just go. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start again. So Sue Doherty from Brockton High School. I'm a librarian at the high school. I've been an English teacher there. And I just want to talk about a couple of points. People have covered a lot of the things that I was going to talk about. One is the money, the cost of the park. Again, we just, in Brockton, gave out 173 pink slips and eliminated 95 positions. And right now, the city's working to see what they can bring back. But technology is a challenge in the district. Our tech people have been working almost all year. We've signed up. Brockton always signs up for any initiative that the BESE puts out. You know, they're very collaborative, so we've signed up to be a park district this year. And our technology people have been working almost all year just on park and getting computers ready for park. We spent a lot of money on laptops for park. A lot of money has gone into park. As a librarian, you know, I watch all that money going into park, and I'm watching libraries close. There's no money for books for the classrooms. There's no money for books for the libraries. There's no money for librarians with closing libraries. So, you know, I see it as a choice that is being made. When we talk about literacy, and I do want to mention literacy because they talk about park being making students college and career ready. And I know when I went to college, I had to do a lot of research papers. That was a really big part of college, was research papers. They didn't give me 5 papers and tell me to write a passage right based on those 5 papers they selected, which is what park is counting as research. So, you know, I know Common Core talks a lot about research, but I know on the test what they do is they give kids like 2, 3, 4 passages and they ask them to synthesize it and pull quotes. And so that's testing your ability to do research. But research is much more than that. Critical thinking is not the ability to pull a bunch of quotes and knit them together. It's the ability to find your own resources, pose your own questions, really deep questions, and look for the answers and sort through. What's online, you know, what's good information online? You know, the kids are looking at a screen, they don't know where, you know, they don't know where this information comes from, who's putting it out. Those skills aren't going to be taught because, you know what, they're not on park. And if they're not on park, what's going to end up happening is that a lot of that will get left out. So I hear the bell, and I'm going to respect that, and just the money is a huge part, the college and career ready part, and I just want to say, like, one last thing, and thinking about all students, you know, that aren't going to college, because that's the other part of it, we say it's getting kids career ready, and the high stakes tests don't get kids career ready. I've heard other people speak to that. I saw a boy the other day, he graduated last year with a certificate of attendance, special education student, worked real hard. He's now working for UPS, and he's back in school to take this year, trying to pass the science MCAS. I don't see how that's going to help him do better at UPS. I don't see why he needs to pass that test to get to work at UPS. Is this hurting him economically? Is this hurting his advancement, his ability to make a living? So it's not just park, it's high stakes tests in general. So park, stop the park, and also the other high stakes test after that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jane Franz, and I am an ELL teacher from Newton, Massachusetts, and I've been teaching. I'm finishing up my 42nd year of teaching. I'm here to speak on behalf of one of my ELL elementary colleagues. This is what she had to say about her testing experience. Before I administered the PARC test to my 9 and 10-year-old students, I had 2 simple rules before they began. Number 1, it's going to be okay. You don't need to cry. Number 2, it's okay if you don't understand. You will be okay. While I made sure that I repeated those rules each time I sat with a beginner or intermediate English language learner student, I'm happy to say they didn't work. I picked the students got upset, they cried, My students work their little hearts out on questions they have no hope of answering. My students are in their first or second year in this country. That means while they've only been exposed to English for less than 2 years, they are held to the very same expectations as students who were born here and who have been speaking English their whole lives. My students are far from fluent, but that doesn't stop them from doing their very best. They are smart kids, and they just don't have the language yet. And that's exactly the problem, the language. Even before they begin the test, and listening to the directions. Think back to your first experience beginning in a beginning language class. Now here are some of the vocabulary words that are pulled from the PARC directions before kids even begin the test. Distribute, adjust. This is 9 and 10-year-old students who have just come to this country. Distribute, adjust, scroll bar, device, hyperlink, click, select. At this point, my kids were discouraged. If I may judge from the practice test, once my students began the test, they discovered stories that were culturally biased, questions that were worded in a difficult way, even for adults to comprehend, questions with no answers at all, but things to drag and drop. And that was it. They were done. The damage was done. Culturally, my 2 rules just didn't sit well with the students. In some cultures, how well you do on a test is a part of your worthiness. It's not okay to do badly. It's the most important thing you do all year. As a result, my students were flooded with feelings of failure and hopelessness, and are unfortunately now associated with their new academic lives in the United States. While I'm not opposed to testing in general, I am opposed to a test that puts my students at such a disadvantage. The PARC is poorly designed and doesn't give students, especially ELL students, a chance. I ask for a test that's easy to navigate, with questions that make sense. ELL students will always struggle with their language, but please give them a fighting chance. Thank you.
My name is Henry Seaton. I'm the department chair at the Community Charter School of Cambridge. I've been teaching there for 8 years. This year I'm also teaching 10th grade history and English. We're a school 6th through 12th grade, serving mostly low-income kids of color. Overall, we are mostly supporters of this new PARC test. We found the questions clear, well-crafted, and they correspond well to the new Common Core standards, which themselves are more clear, simpler, more rigorous, more college and career aligned than the previous Massachusetts standards from our perspective. We like the focus on textual evidence. We like the focus on integrating multiple texts simultaneously. We feel that our students need these for college and beyond. The text complexity on these tests is intimidating. We did find that they're significantly harder than the MCATs, but overall we found that our children and our students have been able to rise to this new challenge, and it's appropriately rigorous. Previously with the MCAS, through hard work, our students would be able to crush the MCAS, but then they'd be crushed by the SAT, crushed by the AP, and clearly MCAS is not rigorous enough. I think our one major request in line with what we've heard a lot this evening is whatever efforts can be made to reduce the length of these tests. Our middle schoolers who took the paper version this year spent 9 days on it, not including science MCAS. I'm aware, as a lot of people are, that it'll be shorter next year, but it still is longer than it needs to be. For example, the ELA performance-based tasks, there's 3. While it is admirable that there is 1 per each of the Common Core writing strands, I would argue we don't need all 3. The third one is the narrative task, which basically asks students to read a story and then to add their own extra chapter after the story. And it just doesn't seem appropriate for middle and high school students and the tasks they'll need to do in college and career and beyond. If you drop that third task, you still end up with 1 fiction-based task, the literary analysis task, and 1 non-fiction-based task, which is the research simulation, which is not a perfect research situation, but it's pretty good simulation, kind of like the BBQ on AP history. We like it. which those two tests would be plenty rich and rigorous enough and relevant to what kids would need for college and post-secondary. Thus, there is a lot, we think there's at least some more excess in these assessments, like the narrative task that can be cut. Overall, there were strong supporters of these new well-designed rigorous exams, and we think even our low-income students can rise to the challenge.
Thank you. Call to reading number 4. Hello.
Good evening. My name is Anna Warren.
Hold on. Let the other group sit down, and I'll call the next one, so we're ready to go. So Diane Splitz, Deb Cuiar, and Dorothy Court. You know who you are, come on up. The handwriting is all the same there, so you probably all signed together, which is ridiculous.
My name is Anna Halloran. I'm a retired Newton teacher as well. But I'm reading tonight a statement that was written by another retiree who was unable to be here due to illness. But she will not be stopped. So here are her words. It is with proud memories of my 36-year career in elementary teaching in Newton, Mass., as well as the influence of the Newton Public Schools on my own education as a student, that I reflect on what is happening today with public education. I can emphatically state that for me, it was the projects, the special events, the plays, and the creative curriculum opportunities that reinforced learning, provided motivation, and made school exciting and memorable and vivid to this very day. It certainly was not the bubble-filling test that inspired me to become a teacher. Sadly, the major issue facing public education today is the excessive amount of standardized testing that is consuming the public schools. The pressure of high-stakes testing imposed on children, teachers, and administrators is changing the character of education from creative curriculum and critical thinking to test preparation and fear. The current testing craze is undermining public education. This is a wrong direction for education and certainly a wrong approach when teaching young children. It is applying high-stakes consequences for students and now for teachers instead of concentrating on support services, creative curriculum, and adequate resources. Instead of building up a testing bureaucracy, it would be far more effective to raise standards and motivate students by using those dollars to provide needed materials, resources, and programs for the public schools. Testing that is done should be used diagnostically to offer solutions for learning rather than punishment for children and teachers. Anyone who has spent time in a public school classroom has learned that the business of education is not a business. It's a craft that is developed and nurtured, a craft with a multitude of dimensions, not all of which can be measured in mathematical terms. A good teacher makes a qualitative difference in the lives of students as much as a quantitative difference in standard measures of learning. Furthermore, without the emotional, motivational, inspirational component, learning does not take place. We must value all the dimensions of teaching and learning, not just reward one and turn teachers into calculating, data-driven automatons.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Cusick, and I'm a 4th grade teacher from Fall River. I've been teaching for over 20 years, but I think the title of Testing Gains Facilitator is a little more accurate to describe what I do over the last several years. We're here to discuss the question as to whether MCAS or PARCC is the better assessment for ensuring college and career readiness. But I think that's the wrong question to ask. I think there are more important questions we should be discussing. So I'm going to ask them. I don't expect you to answer them, but I would like you to consider them. Has testing closed the achievement gap? How many students have been denied a diploma because they have not passed the MCAS? Where are the students who do not have a diploma because they did not pass MCAS? Are those students now employed, productive citizens? Who is tracking their data? What is the goal of education? Is the goal of education to pass a test? Is test preparation a sound instructional practice? Could teaching time be better used? Do tests foster a deep thinking from a student and a love of learning? Do certain demographics have an advantage with testing? Do standardized tests show student potential? Are they an accurate gauge of learning? Should schools divert personnel from students who need them to give tests to other students?
No.
Should special education students be expected to perform in the same way and the same rate despite their disability? Is it okay for a child to feel stressed or anxious about a test? What is the purpose of assessment? Is it to judge or inform instruction? Why do we differentiate our instruction but not our assessment? Should we be measuring what is easy to measure as opposed to what really matters? And finally, do these tests improve our ability to educate our students? If there is any doubt that they do, that is what we should be discussing.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Goodrow. I'm a teacher at Taunton High School of grade 8. The city of Taunton moved grade 8 to the high school a few years back. I work with reluctant readers, actually reluctant learners, who are behaviorally challenged, and the population is predominantly male. The first thing I want to speak of is something that has not been mentioned tonight. Taunton High School has block scheduling, which means the students take 4 classes from September to the end of January, and then they take 4 completely different classes from January until June. It is very evident that the people who created the PARCC testing envisioned high school students taking their subjects from September to June, which is why they have testing that is initiated earlier in the year and should be followed by end-of-year testing, and I'm assuming that's supposed to be measuring growth. But if you took English first semester, you will not be taking English second semester. If you took science second semester, there will be no science first semester. So there is something wrong with that. We have been trained to differentiate our instruction, and one of those things means that we have accommodations for different learning styles and the rate of learning, how fast students are able to accomplish, let's say, a written task. 504 plans frequently have accommodations related to additional time for testing. So our students are used to getting what they need when it comes to that, and not everybody has to fit right into the same block. Yet the PARCC testing says that 60 minutes or 65 minutes or 75 minutes is the time allotted to complete what is in front of them. When I realized this, I really did get the deer in the headlight look. They attempted to do it. Interestingly enough, the high school allowed A and B blocks to be allowed for the testing. They are 84 minutes long apiece. They knew that they wouldn't get it all done in the A block, so the administration had to rely on part of the B block. The kids were told that the time was up. And yet some of my boys, who are not at all shy about speaking up, said, why do we have to stop now if we're in here till the end of the B block? Why can't I finish? Well, they weren't able to finish. I have a lot of boys. A lot of them are very difficult. I've been working with boys for years. They were very verbal. Why do we have to take so many tests? Why did we take 2 days of ELA testing 6 weeks ago, and now we're doing it again? Are we going to be asked the same questions? Same thing for math. And then they took the science MCAS. And some of the 8th graders took the NAEP testing. Taunton decided to use the paper and pencil because they knew full well that the server would crash if they ever tried to put all the 8th graders on computers at the same time. There are over 500 8th graders in Taunton right now. So, and Taunton is a poor community, and we are going to be one of those towns that Mrs. Oral spoke of that will not have the money to take their technology and beef it up in order to get ready. So I'm asking you to take a step or two back and reevaluate the decisions that have been made and whether or not something can be changed in order to make this more sane than it is right now. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Diane Splitz, and I'm a parent from Sandwich. I want to thank Governor Baker for holding these forums so that we parents can be heard. I'm concerned with the implementation of PARC because it further secures the adoption of Common Core as a curriculum standard in Massachusetts. The purpose of the test is to evaluate how well students are grasping and succeeding in learning the Common Core aligned curriculum they are being taught. I've seen many Common Core aligned assignments collected from concerned parents all over the country. They can be described as confusing, developmentally inappropriate, anti-American, and anti-family and faith. Yeah. The more we give control over what our children are learning to the federal government and to corporations, the more our control over what our children is diminished. While I have heard the arguments that this is not a federal but a state-initiated program, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that if our students need to pass a test given to students all over the country, and our children's ability to pass, graduate, and be accepted into college depends on passing the test, the ability to control our children's education will no longer be at the local level. Whoever controls the test controls what our children will need to learn in order to be successful in school. And I'm greatly concerned about our children successfully embracing the values that are being taught. This includes the graphic and disturbing national sex education standards that will be forced into schools once the Common Core standards are fully established in our schools. Addressing the convoluted and incomprehensive nature of Common Core, which PARC will be testing on, my daughter's best friend is a sophomore engineering student at Wentworth. She was a straight A student all the way through grade school. Recently I asked her if she has helped her brother, her 7th grade brother, with his math homework. Her brother is also very bright. Her parents asked her to help him because they don't understand it. So she tried, but she doesn't get it either. His 7th grade math makes no sense to any of them. I've investigated the history of outcomes-based education and its purpose and who stands to benefit by it. And I can tell you that their motivations for the education of my children are far different than mine. American students ranked #1 in the world prior to the implementation of outcome-based education in the 60s and 70s. And since the United States Department of Education was established in, I believe, 79 or 80, our standing in the world has further declined with regard to education. I hope that these forums aren't being held just to provide the appearance that parents like me are being heard. I hope that your intentions are not to just ignore us and move forward as planned with regard to Common Court and Park. Let's return our children's education to the local community, and especially to the parents who hold their local school communities and educators accountable, and say no to Park and to Common Core.
Deb and Dorothy, I hope. And then Mimi Frank, Phyllis Prout, and Linda Zern maybe next.
Oh dear. Hello, my name's Debbie Aguiar, and I am here for a grandmother, Alice Ann Grayson from West Falmouth, Massachusetts. As a grandmother of children in the public schools of Massachusetts, I write a short note to request that Common Core standards and Park assessments be removed from the classrooms of Massachusetts. Common Core is focused on preparation for a workforce at the cost of academic excellence. This is a bottom-down approach which ignores the individual potential of each child. Classical literature is stripped from the curriculum, and even handwriting has been dumped. Children need to grow in wisdom and moral virtue every bit as much as job training. The math courses are limited and the methods untested. Even the health standards portion of Common Core partner with federal sex education guidelines to ensure that all the children, all the people, embrace a sexual moral code opposed to Judeo-Christian values. Our children deserve a higher standard than community college level, work-ready education. Traditional education forms children to become men and women capable of discerning and pursuing their path in life, and who stand ready to defend truth, their church, their families, and their country. We need to return to these goals. Thank you.
Dorothy Portamash from Mashpee, Massachusetts.
Thank you. From where?
Mashpee.
Thank you.
As a healthcare professional, I became alarmed about the physical and psychological effects the Common Core was having on our students when I heard Dr. Mary Calamia, therapist from Stony Brook, New York, speak at the New York State Assembly in 2014. She described what she was seeing in her practice. In the fall of 2012, she began receiving a significant increase in patient referrals. Normally, she would get 10 to 12 referrals a year. She was getting 10 to 12 referrals a month. Her patients were 8th graders who were self-mutilating, cutting, and hurting themselves. The kids were reporting that they just couldn't take the pressure anymore. Her phone never stopped ringing, and she didn't know why at first. After asking the children, they started reporting to her, "We can't take the pressure, it's too much." She also started getting an increase of referrals for elementary students, and they were refusing to go to school. They were telling her they felt stupid, school was too hard, they were throwing temper tantrums, and begged their parents to stay home, upset to the point of vomiting. She heard from the parents about the homework that they could not help their children with. The school teachers were reporting to her a staggering level of depression and anxiety among the students. And that's when she decided to become more aware of Common Core. Her clients were telling her and talking about the tests. It was all about the tests. As the school year progressed and the testing dates approached, her patients who were self-mutilating, their behaviors began to increase. The students reported suffering from insomnia, panic attacks and depressions, some so serious that they resulted in hospitalization. As she studied the Common Core standards and the testing, she realized that the young children could not engage in the critical thinking that the Common Core calls for. She realized that the prefrontal cortex, a part of the brain, was not fully developed, not until adulthood. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for critical thinking, rational decision-making, and abstract thought. All the things that Common Core requires prematurely. The behavioral problems, in her opinion, comes from the internal conflict of pushing the children to use abstract thinking before their prefrontal cortex was fully developed. Our country became a superpower on the backs of men and women who learned in a one-room schoolhouse. We need to rethink Common Core and the high-stakes testing and get back to the business of educating our children in a safe and protective manner. And I say no to PARCC testing.
I'd just like to clarify one thing. You said that was testimony given in New York, right?
The New York State Assembly.
Okay, just to be clear, because the test that they give is not PARCC. So we're trying to gather back to the community to make sure it's straight. So that's very touching and terrible what was described there, but we should be clear it's a different test that was being described.
Good job. Good job. Not ready. That's all right.
New York is hard. New York is hard. New York is hard. New York is hard. Same test.
He doesn't care. Hit the kids.
Same test in
Here's the
your
belt
state.
to be able to go.
So I just would like to clarify, it's not the same test. The impact that was described may or may not be accurate. We're taking testimony trying to understand the evaluation of PARCC, and it's a different test. It's simply a fact. Yes.
Good evening, Phyllis from Nashville. Common Core requires that states prove that students are proficient, and Massachusetts has joined the PARCC consortium to tell us that their assessment instrument is valid and reliable. But is it? Prior to the 1980s, we had standardized achievement tests, the Stanford, the Iowa Basic Skills, California Achievement, and they gave us valuable information at the individual student level, such as a block score, a national norm, a state norm. The questions were not secret and were published to ensure accuracy. The high-stakes test PARCC questions are secret, may not be talked about by students or test monitors, and may be inaccurate. When the MCAS was first introduced into Massachusetts, Dr. Silver demolished several questions for their subtle but certain inaccuracies during televised hearings, thus stressing the need to have all questions subject to strict scrutiny if we're going to be using them to judge our students, teachers, and districts for proficiency. The IO is still available, and at the highest level of data analysis will cost the district about $9.50 per student, while the PARCC will give us no timely data about students, teachers, or parents, and cost the taxpayers about $29 per student. So who's going to be scoring the PARCC? I've seen advertisements on Craigslist in other states for attempts to score the PARCC. The guidelines are so loose that there's sure to be scorers who have far less skill in subject matter than the teachers whose yearly evaluations will be writing on these scores. And who's going to evaluate the evaluators? What kind of instructions are the evaluators being given? Some evaluators have gone public and told how they've been advised by testing companies to find ways to give out more 3s and 4s. That sounds like a judge giving a jury biased instructions. And the National Assessment of Education Progress tests students in a wide variety of subject areas that is so broad that each student only takes a small portion of the total assessment. There are no consequences to the student, their teachers, their district, or their state. The consequences of the PARCC assessment are so high that we need to have strong safeguards to protect against potential harm from faulty assessment decisions. The states are allowed to set their own proficiency level, and no two states have the same cut score for proficiency. And no state has set their score for proficiency to match the NAEP proficiency level. Massachusetts has the highest proficiency level, but it is still in the basic range, along with 8 other states when compared to Maine. The rest of the states set their proficiency level at below basic range when matched to the Maine, making the claim that the park and Common Core will let us compare students to one standard across the country a horrible joke. The park is expensive, overly time-consuming, extremely stressful, and a corporate gold mine. We're not measuring students to a standard with the states able to set their own cut score for proficiency. Where most students will pass, we're measuring the standards against the student. Send them to the park, please.
I'm Linda Zuring. I graduated from Bridgewater State College in Education, got my master's in education. I was a former school committee member in Warren and former selectman. I've taught preschool, kindergarten, elementary grades, and Pittston High School, in public and private schools, and am presently self-employed as a teacher. I was listening to the people talking about not being ready to go into college, and perhaps that's because we spend so much time teaching our kids to a test. I was never in favor of the MTest testing, and I still am not. I think time can be used in better ways. The kids should be learning basic math, our history, the Constitution, cursive writing, and get rid of the 6 or 7 weeks of Islam study, and some of the other things that are in our curriculum which really aren't needed before we get a basis on our own history. The MCAS, the park assessments are an unfunded mandate and very expensive in the town of Warren. It was costing us $100,000 this past year, $450,000 to the Upper Cape Regional, just to get the computers and materials for the park testing. Common Core is just what it says, common, not exceptional, and should be eliminated from our educational system, along with park assessments and MCAS too. Common Core is indoctrination coming from the federal level and the UN, while the park assessment is merely an instrument that tells us how well the indoctrination and data collection are working. Wow. The constitutional authority of educating students is given to the local school committees, and that is where the testing and curriculum decisions should be taking place, at the local level, not at a state or federal level, and especially not from the think tank that is connected to the United Nations.
Wow.
Education should instill creativity and a love of learning. Children should be prepared for life and lifelong learning. Common Core and these assessments have already sucked the creativity and love for teaching out of our educators. How then do we instill these attributes in our children? It's time to look at our children as individuals who have unique qualities to offer the world. They and the teachers are not robots to spit out the correct, indoctrinated information required by our federal government. It's time for our parents, teachers, and school committee members to take back their responsibility and authority. I say no more indoctrination, no park, no MCAS.
Thank you both. I want to thank everyone for coming. I'm sorry we won't get to everyone. We have overstayed our extra time at Bridgewater State. We have several more hearings this summer coming up. Please feel free to join us or send written testimony to the department. We would be happy to hear from everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.